You ever outgrow a phase, but not the feeling that got you into it? This is a 1999 Nissan Silvia, a real deal JDM import, and today it's getting something most 240 kids never ask for: restraint. Now, before you click away thinking we've lost our edge, we're still using megaphones, we're still chasing power, but what we're doing here is more subtle and honestly more difficult. Because what do you do when you love the sound of boost, grew up idolizing Kichi Tsuchiya, but now you've got a mortgage payment, a neighborhood Facebook group, and ears that'll ring after 15 minutes on the highway with a JDM style exhaust? This Silvia's current setup is your typical HKS style cannon, angled mounted canister with a huge thin wall tip, loud, raspy, and proud. And even with factory cat in place, it still screams, I'm stuck in 2007. The goal? Build a turbo back system that flows better, sounds better, looks more sophisticated, and somehow ends up quieter. We know it sounds like we're chasing a unicorn, but if anyone's going to tame that 4-cylinder bark while keeping the spirit alive, it's us. After all, you've been asking for a 4-banger build since before the R33 video, and here it is. And if you're here just hoping for another budget eBay blast pipe tutorial, well, sorry. You might just want to mute this one, but don't worry. Your neighbors already did. So make sure you've hit the subscribe button, like the video, drop a comment on how you think this is going to turn out, and let's get into it. All right, so the S15 is on the dyno, and what we're trying to find out is exactly what the years and the transport across the ocean has done to the power of the car. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When an exhaust already has a optimization, an aftermarket modification on there, another brand, something else, we're really not picking up too much power. There might be splitting hairs here and there. And again, if we were to optimize it in a different way, we might be picking up power to trade off power in a different end. So we're not really looking for peak power numbers. If we make some, that'd be great, but this shouldn't be a huge horsepower difference. I really just want to get it on the dyno so you guys could hear, see where the baseline's at, and find out if there's a difference. All right, 262, which is pretty dang good. And for context, an E46 M3 rated at 333 horsepower puts about the same to the wheels as this little 4-cylinder turbo Silvia. So I would say this thing's in pretty good shape. Sounds all right, but I think we can make it sound a little bit better. Can we beat those horsepower numbers? I don't think so, but maybe we can. We'll find out. So being this is basically a 3-inch system, there's some points of improvement that we can make, but in reality, it's a 3-inch system that probably flows the best for this car, it makes the most power. The improvements that we should be able to elicit are changes in tone and drone. All right, so what we've got here is a pretty typical aftermarket JDM style exhaust that you'd expect to see in a car like this. 3 inches going from the turbo back, factory catalytic converter, and the exhaust system doesn't look too bad. We've got some sort of stamping here with a number. Now I don't see any sort of name branding on here, but it looks like a fairly quality system. Nothing that I see that's too bad. So the question goes is, how do you perfect something like this? Well, I've got some ideas. So the way that I've used to kind of combat that in one way and change drone are going to be stepping the sections up as we go along. Each time you change a step up, the pulse multiplies for the sound wave, and it essentially can give you a different higher end tone, bringing out some of the characteristics that are actually pretty good when you get into high RPM on the SR20 motor. So the plan is 275, which we'll be stepping up to 3-inch before the Megaphone. The Megaphone will then be employed in the 3-inch section, which will carry us back through here, which is where we're going to really differentiate ourselves. Now, that straight through section with the resonated muffler, it's a decent resonated muffler. The problem though is that because it's the same size diameter opening and the length of that pipe, you probably really get a drone bounce where that wave can just cycle up and down. And I've talked about it before, guys. One of the best ways to combat drone is splitting the pipe and stepping it down and then going into your resonated section, which will probably be a little bit challenging. We want to split the flow. I want to keep it refined. Most of our muffling will be back here. Cody, what do you think about splitting that 3-inch into 2 1/4 in sections? Is that going to be a hard Y pipe to make?
No, not necessarily, because from the 2 1/4 Y pipe, we can kind of just use a reducer and then just step that up to 3-inch. The tricky part is having a nice section to go into the Y pipe. So getting it from here over and up and then out, that's going to be the tricky part.
I think a lot of people tend to have the canted, like slant style look, which probably is a little bit better for flow. I would, though, trying to keep this thing a little bit classier, like to try to keep the 2 mufflers and everything straight going out to the tips. We'll figure out what we do with tips once you get that stuff there, but I think to kind of make this car more age appropriate, I think having the 2 lined up end mufflers would be just a step in a classier direction. So I'd like to try to see if you can get those straight instead of like coming at an angle. That would be ideal for this build, I think.
Right. All right, so taking off the cat section, it bolts up to the downpipe. We have a lovely broken stud here, and ideally we want to get that out and replace it. And then I'm looking at the other 2 studs that are up here, and I kind of want to replace those too. So we have to replace the one anyway. Might as well replace all 3, give them some good stuff. All right, so we got the start of the downpipe made, and from this point, we're just gonna bolt this guy up, and then once we get it up there, we're gonna figure out what's next. We're gonna either put a Megaphone or some sort of resonator in this area and then go from there. All right, so we got the downpipe kind of figured out. From the turbo, we're stepping up from 2 1/4 to 2 1/2, 2 1/2 into 3-inch Megaphone, and we're gonna use one of the bigger Megaphones to try and really bring out the nice SR20 sound. And from the Megaphone, we're gonna kind of shoot back, and I have an idea what we're gonna do for this nice little straight section. We're gonna bump it up to 3 1/2, and that's gonna help with the sound quality and drone control. And then from there, we'll probably have to figure something out for the muffler section, but we'll get to that when we get there. So we got the S pipe into our reduced Y pipe for the mufflers. This is gonna opt for the most rasp control, drone control, noise suppression, and we're gonna be using 2 of these ultra quiets, and they're gonna go on the end here. The customer, he wanted a little bit quieter tone for an exhaust, so that's why we're gonna do it this way. Now we're just gonna weld everything up and then fit it in place and then work on tips. All right, so as you can see, the muffler section looks a little bit different than last time. The rear section was kind of too low down to the ground, and in order to kind of kick it back up towards the diff, get it some more ground clearance, everything had to move up, obviously. So this guy would have had to been changed completely. So instead of changing that whole configuration, I just added a V-band. That way we can kind of rotate this up and down a little bit and not have to change this whole system.
You actually did a pretty good job getting all those steps in there. We got the Megaphone, cleared that differential. Kind of want to hear how it sounds to see if it's too turbulent. Both me and Cody have some experience with SR20s, and I think you probably agree.
Yeah.
Most of them kind of can sound a little ricer.
A little bit, yeah.
Is that the word? So it's kind of like we're trying to make this thing flow better, be more refined, but it has to be quieter too. And I'm worried because you don't have the rear mufflers on there yet. And I'm hoping we're not gonna hear something we can't dial out, but let's just bite the bullet. You wanna start it up and see what it sounds like?
See what it sounds like.
One more time. All right, so it's a little rough, and I know why that is. It's because we have all of those steps that are essentially acting like a chamber each step of the way. Although if you hear that top end, it's kind of ripping. It's kind of got a great tone once you get it moving in the RPM range. I'm still sticking to our plan though. We're gonna use the dual vibrant, ultra quiets, and I think the step down is actually gonna dial most of that out. All of that garbage in the beginning, that rattly, yeah. That's what I'm worried about, and I think, but if you hear it, it doesn't really have that ear-piercing, like, metallic at the top end. It kind of just has that garbage at the low end. So I think if we muffle it out right at this rear section, it's gonna clean it up and it's gonna make it quieter and more refined, but I don't know, you got to finish it up and we got to see. So have at it, man. Ever since our Megaphone video hit 1 million views, we've had one question flood our inbox. Can you show us exactly where to place the Megaphone for best sound? The short answer is not at the back of the car. The long answer, well, let's talk about our friend Oscar, whose last name will blur just long enough to keep him from getting disinvited to Cars and Coffee. Oscar recently emailed us saying he installed 2 Megaphones on his single exhaust Civic Type R, and now the car sounds like a bass drum fighting for its life in a shipping container. And the cherry on top, he didn't buy them from us, but he did ask us to help him fix it. Now listen, we're not here to gatekeep, but if you're gonna knock off our work and then ask for support when it goes wrong, maybe at least buy a sticker first. We're a small shop, not a free tuning hotline. That said, we're gonna help because this is actually a great teachable moment. Don't stack the Megaphones. Don't put them at the back of the exhaust, and for the love of boost, don't immediately route them into 2 sharp bends and a valve muffler. You want your Megaphone as close to the source of the sound as possible, right after the turbo or the header. That way the piping has time to mellow out the tone and shape the wave properly. Putting it near the tip just creates a boomy, hollow resonance and no refinement. Oscar, thanks for giving us the opportunity to show everyone what not to do. We're not mad, we're just acoustically disappointed. And for the rest of you, if you want our help, maybe don't ghost the checkout button. After telling you guys to put the Megaphone closest to the source of the sound, you might be wondering, well, why'd you choose the middle for the Megaphone? And that's simple. The car had a flange that came out to 275 before it went up to the just a hair over 3-inch exhaust. And since we're utilizing steps in this 3-step system, the 275, the 3, and the 3.5, I wanted to get at least 2 steps in the path before the Megaphone so that we got some sound amplification from the steps before we hit the Megaphone to further refine the sound. So in that case, because I'm going after something, normally we would want to put it here, but I'm trying it a little further back this time, and we're gonna see if that thing can really bring out the best tone for this little SR20. All right, so I've been messing with this thing since last night, and what I keep feeling, what it sounds like is happening, is something that a lot of you familiar with JDM cars would call fuel cut, would call the ECU seeing something, not liking it and shutting it off. So sometimes it's the mass airflow meter exceeding its voltage, but it appears there's an upgraded mass air meter on there. Sometimes it's boost cut, cuts fuel because it sees the boost exceeding its limit, but this thing has, now this is a controller for an early standalone ECU, very simple, very rudimentary for the time. I believe these were out in 2000, maybe even earlier. We're on a lot of different cars, cutting edge at the time, but now not so much. There's lots of better standalones. This is kind of dated. Problem though is that, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there is nothing on the screen. Right now there should be options here. I don't think that means it's dead. What I do think it means is this controller is not working or something else is going on. I'm not sure what we're gonna do. I thought this was just gonna be a let's dyno this thing and see what it's doing. But the car seems to be making a good bit more power, but I'm hearing cutting. I don't know if it's mechanical. I don't know if it's part of the ECU exceeding something, but it looks like we're primed to make almost 20 more horsepower before I'm seeing the cut on the same follow through on the dyno. I'm not sure what to do. This is not what I want to be doing right now. This is a exhaust video, not a diagnostic fix this car video. So let's dig in a little bit and see what's going on. All right, so ran it again. I could see a few things going on. It's kind of hard to log with this, and to be honest, this is a JDM market, meaning half of it is in English, the other half's in Japanese. I'm not 100% sure every setting I could go in and adjust. So the thing though is that after I have the issue, I let the car idle, and I am noticing that it's kind of bumping around a little bit. So I'm almost wondering, is this something mechanical going on? So I'm gonna go to the old fashioned stuff, checking the plugs, checking the fuel injectors, but I also have a tool that I think might help me maybe identify if this is some sort of cylinder running issue that we're gonna pull out here and see if we can maybe shed some light on what's going on. So I've been talking a lot with you guys about my struggles of dealing with sponsorship in this channel, knowing what to take on, how I want to do it, and not kind of feeling like a whore while doing it. Now, the main issue I'm having is if I'm going to be kicking something out, I want it to be something I'm going to use. And unexpectedly, this was just an exhaust video, but something that I got sent that I thought was interesting, turned out we might have some use for. And what that product is HSF Tools F2W thermal camera. Now, personally, I've always wanted a thermal camera here at the shop, and watching the prices over the years going from, you know, a few $1,000s to under $1,000, and now I think you could pick this thing up for around 300 bucks. And there are some comparable models, at least that I saw in the area, that are a little cheaper with similar features, but I'm gonna go over that real quick, just kind of the things that strike me as being pretty neat. Now, the screen is a 3.2 inch screen, so it's decent size for something along these lines. Now, I'm gonna read off the box here, 25 hertz image frequency, and what I believe that means is how fast it's picking up the new image to process where the thermal gradient is, where it sees the temperature differential, which means it should be pretty smooth, almost like a camera. It's not sitting there chopping on you. It's got 16 gigabytes for, let's just say you're taking multiple snapshots, images, things along those lines. You can store it later on. You track, you want to take, you want to take some documents of this side and then check the other side so you can compare later on. So that's pretty neat. It's pretty good amount of storage considering the files are pretty small. Now, the thing that I kind of think is not great for an auto shop, but might be good for some of your home projects, is the 4 to 1022 degree Fahrenheit range. Some of the manifolds we're dealing with can be higher than that for diagnostics, around 1400. But for this case, and what I want to use it for, I just need to see if something's cooler than the other, not so much at a high temperature. So it actually might be perfect for an auto shop like that that's looking to pick this up, especially when it comes to coolant work, diagnostics along those lines. Now, something that the company asked me to tell you guys about, which sounds kind of interesting, just not sure how it would work for an automotive shop, is the Intel Fault. It's an AI function that supposedly is supposed to allow newer users to jump in and be able to see common problems, so that way you're not interpreting data. Kind of is supposed to identify issues. And I think it's mostly for home inspections and things like that. So I'm not sure how that would play out for us, but let's pop it open and check it out here. Right away, got the manual and a calibration certificate. And this is a pretty neat carrying case. I'm sure this is in here. I'm gonna assume this is cables. Oh, it's some sort of strap. This looks like it is the charging cable. Oh, and an out for if you're trying to do maybe video out or put this up on a laptop. Little thank you card. And this strap looks like you wanted to strap this on and carry it around. I guess that could be handy. I'm not going to use it. It'll be used as a carrying case, but this is the F2W. Let's power it on. Hopefully it's got some charge. You usually do have some sort of charge. And there we go, it's powering up. The other cool thing is this has a Wi-Fi connectivity through your Wi-Fi where you can mirror this to a wired device such as your phone. I believe they have an Android app and an iOS app, but the idea here is I'm gonna take this over to the car, and what I'm looking for is on that manifold going into the turbo, I wanna see if I see a cylinder running cooler so I can maybe identify a cylinder misfire. Again, this could be a dead cylinder. It could be an even miss where, maybe the air fuel's wrong, a slight spark plug where it's not missing all the time. But I'm gonna check this thing out. This is low-hanging fruit, so I can just grab this thing, power it up, go take a look while this thing's running. And if I do see a dead cylinder, I should be able to identify it pretty quickly where getting more involved, removing the spark plugs, doing the other things, it's just a good initial check that might give me some direction before I get into the heavier diagnostics. Let's go check this thing out. All right, so just had a little bit of setup, had to put in the date and time, things along those lines, connect the Wi-Fi, download the app, and like I said, it does a screen mirroring. So if I return here already, you can see. Now what's gonna be cool about this is if I wanna take a video and I'll be able to share with you guys, I'll be able to just upload this, record this, and do what I want with it. All right, so this is pretty cool. And I could change the color. This is called rainbow, I believe. Oh, this is rainbow. White hot, black hot, red hot, fusion. I kind of like this fusion view. What I'm going to be looking for is the exhaust primary coming out of the head into the manifold. I want to see even temperature between all the cylinders. So this thing's great. It tells you where the center is, that little marker, and it tells you the max temperature in the picture and then the minimum temperature in the picture. So right now I'm pointing at the center. We're about 300 degrees, coming off a little bit, 400. Jump to the next one. You guys might be able to pick up on it, but this thing's kind of lumping around. It looked to be all about just over 500 degrees, which is telling me things are looking pretty even. You'd expect to see one of these a lot cooler than the other if we did have a dead cylinder. And if we did have a cylinder that was partially misfiring, it still would be a good to be cooler. And this just looks a little too close. So as neat as this tool is, this has basically told me that I'm gonna have to look for something that's across multiple cylinders. So could be kind of a weak spark plug, could be kind of a weak injector, but nothing that is making the cylinder cooler. My head instantly goes to, do we have an air leak? Do we have something, unmetered air, something along those lines? So I'm gonna check the voltage on the map, and we're probably gonna do a smoke test next. All right, so when it comes to diagnostics, you always got to start with your basics because we already checked the spark plugs. Now what we're going to do is do a smoke test of the intake system, try to see if we see any leaks, anything that could be causing the car to maybe run lean. Although watching the map sensor in the Power FC, it looks like it's about where it should be, about 19 inches of mercury, which is what I'd expect out of these things. So I don't think we've got a leak, but the other thing that could be going on is maybe the idle valve's kind of gummed up, causing it to bounce a little bit. Although that wouldn't cause a misfire up top. So I'm gonna pull it apart before I do the smoke test because I'd have to reseal it, and I don't wanna reseal it after the smoke test in case there's a leak. So I'm gonna pull it off, see how bad it looks, and clean it out. All right, so that guy's out. Gasket looks pretty good, but I don't know, it doesn't look excellent in there. Kind of some carbon, kind of some gunk, some years on it. So I'm gonna go ahead, put some brake clean in there, clean it out, put it back on, and then we're gonna do the smoke test, see if we see any leaks. I got the smoke machine all hooked up. Basically, I'm pressurizing here where the mass air meter goes through the turbocharger into the charged air system, through the manifold. Now a trick I've taught you guys before, but if you're new to the channel, you always want to let the pressure out of the back end. And why do you do that? Because when the air is pushing in, it has to pressurize air without smoke into the system before it'll start leaking smoke. So if you have air without smoke and it has to come out whatever hole, whatever orifice it's coming out of, you're going to be waiting a long time, maybe long enough that you don't pick up the leak. So once you see smoke, and usually the best spot is through the crankcase system, you go ahead, you cap it off, and you start inspecting for leaks. Now, why I let the intake system build up and the rest of the system start looking for leaks. I've got the fuel pressure system here hooked up or tapped into where the fuel filter is on the frame rail, and I'm just gonna key on and off a few times, just see where the pressure rises. Not start it up because we can, obviously, but just let that prime. So I'm doing two things at once here. 55. This thing looks really, really good. Is this machine still on? It's still on. I don't see any evidence of what I would think would be a leak that could cause a misfire. But let's talk about this guy, fuel pressure. Now, this is the shop fuel gauge. Maybe it's off a tiny bit, but it is not off by 10 PSI. This seems a little bit high. Now, where I'd want this thing to be at with the engine off, just key on, and the engine running, would be somewhere around 44. Let's just say this thing's old. If I saw it at 47 or something like that, maybe it reads a little high, I'd be okay. But this thing's dang near 55, if not higher, closer to 60 when I first keyed on. So that's gonna be something to look at once I get this thing back apart and running. But this is why I wanted to do the smoke test after I did the idle air valve, because now I can see, did I create a leak afterwards? I didn't. Everything looks pretty good. I'm gonna rule out that we've got a leak we're dealing with. I don't see anything that I'm worried about. I don't think that's the issue. The fuel's concerning here. We'll check into the various voltages of the sensor. We still possibly have timing, although it's hard to mess up timing on these things. They're set with the cam angle sensor here, and you basically set it, make sure they match up, make sure they match the ECU, and it's pretty much foolproof. And if you usually have it wrong or off a tooth, it won't start. So could it be off a tiny bit? I doubt it. They self-correct. They have a little bit of to get themselves back to it, so you'd have to be weirdly off for that to be the issue. I don't think that's the issue. I think maybe it's something to do with fuel. Maybe we're too high. Let's get the smoke machine stuff off. Let's get this thing running and we'll check that out. All right, so according to this, my vacuum readings match what I'm picking up off the Dyno vacuum gauge. I've got 1.2 at the mass air meter, which is about right for a 300ZX mass air meter, which is what this has. Timing says it's about 16, 15 degrees. It's really where you want it. So I don't see anything striking me as weird, at least on here. But let's check that running fuel pressure. Like I said, we want to see it between, whoa, check that out, almost 60. So now the nice thing, and I don't know if you guys see this here, but we've got an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. I don't know if that's going to do anything, but maybe I could just crank it down. Now the other thing is that pressure should actually be with the vacuum gauge disconnected. So we are still too high. So I'm gonna go down a little more. Hook this guy back up. Again, I don't trust my gauge. It's been beat up, dropped, and everything else, and I always feel like it's been a little bit high. So while this thing should be around 40, with the line disconnected, 45, 44, I think I might just touch it back a tiny bit and lock it down, and then maybe that's all it needed. I don't think we're gonna be that lucky that it was just a screw we had to turn, but it's worth trying out. All right, so I don't know if you guys heard that, but that ran much better. Keller, I was having you watch the fuel gauge. What'd you see?
Max pressure went up to 60.
It still went up to 60?
Yeah.
Where was it sitting, though, once it came back down? Was it sitting kind of at 40, or was it still high?
Just a little above 40.
So
right there.
I'm scared because this gauge isn't always accurate. What they were saying is 37. If we're shooting up to 60, and I think you heard it, we almost had a clean run, but there was a little bit of popping towards the end. And those, wow, those numbers, look at this. Look at this. So I had to pull up an old graph. and I think it was run 2 was our best. Look at that power curve. We are blasting past that, and that's just with an exhaust. So I don't know why this would have come up after the fact. Shouldn't we have been dealing with it before that? And this is kind of the area I started feeling it dipped down at. So I think we're gonna take a little bit more fuel out of it. At least on the AFR, it's saying it's still reading super rich. So I think we're safe to pull a little bit more fuel out. Let's crank that back a little bit more. So what did we actually end up with? What was supposed to be a simple exhaust flex turned into a master clap, and why you want a shop that actually knows and cares about your car. We were hyped to see what our new system would do on the dyno until the Silvia started cutting out between 5,000 and 7,200 RPM. No clean pulls, no unusable comparisons, and yeah, we could have just handed the keys back and said, hey, the exhaust works, good luck with the engine thing, but that's not how we work. So we dove in. We wrestled with the standalone ECU whose interface looked like a pre-Y2K Tamagotchi screen. Stumbled through the contrast menu, checked and rechecked and gapped the plugs, smoke tested for leaks, nothing. Then we checked fuel pressure, almost 60 PSI when it should have been 40. Fixing that woke the car up until an even sharper cut showed up. And second guessing my own call, we threw in a fresh set of plugs and bam, finally got a clean pull. 262 to 310 wheel horsepower. That's 50 wheel horsepower with 0 timing tweaks, 0 boost changes, and absolutely no fairy dust. Just letting the thing run like it should. But here's the part that'll mess with your head the most. All that was done while making the car quieter. The Megaphone was there for tone, not noise. Shaping character instead of drowning it in chaos. Sometimes actually chasing refinement unlocks performance. This was never about building the cheapest exhaust we could. That's already been handled by the aftermarket. It was about building something purpose-made for the enthusiast who still loves the car scene but appreciates a little more self-respect and maybe a touch more sound editing. The takeaway? A great exhaust isn't just loud pipes. It's a result of understanding the whole car, but most importantly, understanding the driver. And sometimes the road to better sound takes you straight through making the car better, period. The real flex, it isn't how loud your car is, it's how good it sounds when it doesn't have to. The Silvia makes power, still has character, but now it doesn't feel like it's trying to relive high school with a vape cloud and a 3-inch fart can. It's aged into something we can all respect, controlled chaos. If you've ever had a moment where your car made you wince instead of grin, drop it in the comment. We've all been there, and some of us just take longer to admit it. Stay tasteful, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next pull.